All right. People coming in.
Yay.
Yay. I heard myself come back through your speakers.
Oh.
I gotta
Oh,
not be
weird.
so not be so excited. I'm so sorry,
Oh
I'm
man,
so
it should.
excitable.
It's not very loud in my ear, and I've got a separate microphone. That's kind of strange that it
I
made it
heard
through.
maybe I don't know. I heard it again.
Huh. Weird.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, it is afternoon, even here on the West Coast. Hope everyone's doing well today. We do not have Dad with us today, so we get to
We
party,
don't.
get to talk about whatever we want. That's how the rules go. Not going to talk about
Yeah.
security at all. We're going to talk about, I don't know, remote controlled drones. How about that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm down. I don't know anything about them, but they sound awesome. So
Yeah, they're just fun to fly around. You could put on
yeah.
goggles and FPV, just blast.
Oh man, I feel like I would probably hurl.
Do you get a lot? You get a lot
The
of motion
goggles.
sickness.
I do. Yeah, I struggle with like
Yeah.
3D movies and stuff like that. So.
Gotcha. Did your heater turn back on or something?
It did. Yeah. Let me kill it in just a second.
Apologies for Pinky's background sounds.
Yeah, if it kicks back on now, it's gonna have to. I'll be a popsicle. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't have problems with that really, in like VR and stuff like that. I don't generally have issues with. Very occasionally, I've always said that like I think that it's kind of in my opinion, at least what I experience, motion sickness is one of those things that happens when my brain receives input that I'm not expecting to receive, right? So like if I think I should be balanced and all of a sudden I lose my balance or the world seems like it's going to spin or something like that, it causes me issues. But there's something about like doing the FPV drone racing and stuff like that, because I have done that in the past, that I don't know. I just like, one, I know it's not me. My brain has like a disconnect from it. And two, I mean, all of my inputs on the joystick is what's causing the control. So I do know mentally, like if I do this, it's going to go roll left or, roll back or something like that. So, but I was talking about this not too long ago with one of the guys on my team. He started kind of like wanting to get into that. And just for anyone out there, and we will talk about security here in a minute, but for anyone out there who's interested in it, there's you can hook the transmitters or the controllers for FPV, like one of these, and you can hook it up through like USB to the computer and you can play sims, right? Like actual drone racing sims and flight sims and stuff like that with them. And your screen is basically the view you would see inside of the goggles. And he was playing that and he was getting motion sick just from seeing it on the screen. And I was like, you might want to stand back from your monitor, sit back from your monitor so you can see more of the world. So your body is like your brain doesn't think you're the one spinning, but it's a real concern definitely for people who get kind of motion sick a little bit early.
Yeah, it doesn't. It like I don't get it. Like I don't get seasickness or anything like that. I don't get car sick. I don't have any of those troubles. But it's just something about that, and it's probably that. It's that disconnection from your brain, right? Maybe better, like you're saying, if I was controlling it, because I don't have problems with video games or anything. But I know, like when The Hobbit came out, we went to go see it on one of the. It wasn't quite an IMAX, but it was a very huge screen, and just yeah, I was struggling, and I have migraine issues too, and I'm sure it's something related to that. But those things pretty much always trigger migraine, and then I feel terrible. So it's not worth it for me. But I would totally give the drone racing a try, and then just have a bucket handy if I needed it. But,
yeah, absolutely. Just go lay down on the couch for a few hours. My first time playing
yeah.
VR. All
Like,
right. Well, I think we've given people enough chance to get in here. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but
no, it does not matter in the slightest. So.
Shall we talk about a few things? How's everybody doing in chat? I see a couple people in chat. Appreciate the chat. Drone POV racing is pretty rad. I mean, I think it is. It's pretty neat controlling something that can go like 80 mile an hour through the air through like twist and turn agility type stuff. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, and hi Troy.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, where should we start off? I want to talk about ChatGPT.
Yeah, let's do that. So why not? It seems like it's been the theme.
Talk about things that give me migraines.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So we threw a link in the day's show notes about this. And in my notes, I have the this is my surprise face, and it's just the emoji with the
Yeah.
flat line because we knew it was coming. We talked about it. But essentially, just this article is talking about how employees are feeding sensitive information into ChatGPT. Shocked, I know.
Right.
Um, and just some of the bad things that can happen there. Um, I don't know how much you got into that article, Eric, but I did
Oh, a
have
decent amount, and some other ones
okay.
too, for that matter. I mean, the funny thing to me is that, and I read it, and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, that said, I mean, I recently built a new computer, and I went on ChatGPT again, and I realized like it must use a cookie or some kind of browser data to determine whether or not you've seen the warning pop up, not like an account thing flag. And so it popped up again being like, hey, this is what we're doing, this is how the current situation is, hey, don't put sensitive data into this, people will review this, and it might be, you know what I mean, like it does
Yeah.
tell you that when you go use it for the first time. And but I mean, one thing we know about people in general is that they don't read, especially the things that are like the blockers to get into something, right? So like we don't
Click.
read terms and conditions, we don't read end user license agreements, anything like that. We don't read the thing that comes up and tell us maybe what's new. I
Yeah.
no one cares, I haven't even experienced it, why do I know what's new, right?
Right.
So these pop-ups come up and I'm like, just let me do the thing. And so I guess I'm probably one of the weirdos who reads them because I did know that it said that. But yeah, nobody does, right? And they don't kind of keep this in the back of their minds, like I should probably not put, I don't know, patient information when I'm a doctor into this thing, something like that. So
That was the example in the article that I loved. Was so in the article it talks about a couple of things in that particular article. I'm sure there are others like Eric mentioned, but that one of them was an executive had put in their 2023 strategy, like their plan for the year, right? Drop that in, try to make a PowerPoint out of it, that kind of thing. But that one's not as bad as the doctor who put actual patient information in there, and
mhm.
I'm assuming was just like, hey, what's wrong with this person? That's probably what they were trying to
No,
do.
it said that they put the patient's name and their diagnosis or whatever their condition, whatever the situation was,
Yeah.
asking it to write a letter for their insurance company. So they like
I
the
see.
a
Okay.
patient to come to them and be like, I need a letter like saying whatever, so it's sent to my insurance, right, to do claim going or something, right? And he didn't feel like writing it, or he or she, right, didn't feel like writing it apparently, and but it. I mean, I get that. That's one of the
Yeah.
things that ChatGPT is great for, is writing these things that we're just like, I don't even know exactly what I should write here, but I could do a few hours of research, standard templates, and what people do in these situations, and what the
Right.
insurance company wants to know here, or I could let ChatGPT do that for me.
Yeah. 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 I didn't see that. I just assumed they were doing the old doctor. Let me Google that trick, which I see pretty often in doctor's visits, which I don't even have a problem with. I say that like it's a bad thing, but if you got the entirety of human knowledge at your fingertips, why not use it? I'm okay with that. You're not having to
Yeah,
rely on what you can remember. I mean, we talk about that in our jobs a lot of times. It's like, yeah, there's a decent amount of our job that's Googling things because we can't hold all of that information. So
yeah,
I'm pretty okay with a lot of it. But yeah, just the sensitive information in there. Like I said, we knew that was coming. We knew it was going to be a problem. I know we've been warning like our teams and stuff like that because it's really decent at scripting. We've utilized it to script a few things and test it out and things like that. But it's like, hey, don't put your credentials in there. Don't do things like that.
right.
And so not surprising, but also just kind of funny. And we wanted to throw it in here because we've been talking so much about ChatGPT lately.
Yeah, but it does like hit on an important thing. And I think there's a quote in there from I believe it was a lawyer at some law firm. And they were just saying, like employers should include in like their confidentiality agreement and their policies, like prohibitions on employees putting data into these types of things, right? Anything it's like confidential, proprietary, trade secrets, whatever, from it, being put into. I mean, we kind of already write in that you shouldn't go telling you know competition about it or random people on the street, right? But that they shouldn't go into these things either, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good point. I think there's a lot of people who aren't really thinking about that yet. They don't really have maybe time to think about that yet. I haven't thought about that implication yet, but I think people should be kind of taking that away at some point. So
Based on the other article that we didn't actually put in the show notes, it was something that was Eric and I were talking about before this. I'm hesitant to think that it's just because this is a new thing and people aren't going to do it. Or we do need that language in those contracts. That's totally fine. But there was another one that we were just kind of looking at. It was a really interesting survey that was done. The source might be a little bit biased, given that they apparently protect against this type of thing. But it was a company called GitGuardian, and they did kind of a survey, kind of a search and look, or whatever it was. I'm not sure their methodology, but and found that developers had leaked 10 million credential sets or secrets, as they put them.
Secret tokens, something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
API keys. Yeah, exactly, that type of stuff. We were also looking at certificates, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. But they had leaked 10 million of those just in 2022 alone, which was like, I think 150x the 2021 number, if I read that correctly, into GitHub posts, right? So doing a push of code up to GitHub, that kind of thing, leaving that kind of thing in there. And GitHub's been around forever. We've always known this was a problem. People warned against it, but it seems like people are just kind of getting a little bit sloppy with that over the last couple of years.
Yeah, the interesting thing to me is that one seems to be, and I heard we just discussed this before, so I haven't even read the article, but hearing the 150 times as much as before, that surprised me, because honestly, I can say as an attacker, as someone who does comb through some of that stuff and look for those things, that I've seen that in my experience on the decline. It's still definitely there to some extent, or you'll find it in previous commits and it's been committed out or something like that, but you'll still find stuff like that. But it's more, I feel like the eyes on it have increased, right? And I feel like people have, at least some more people know about it, and they've been reducing it. So to hear that it's 150 times worse than previous year or something like that, that is surprising to me. But also at the same time, I mean, just hearing that there's a huge amount of it happening, is not surprising either. Because again, people don't kind of think that this is, I mean, there's two things about it. One, they don't realize how public it is. I mean, even if they're putting their stuff up there, they're like, no one's going to find my thing. No one cares that, like, we don't have some public thing or some huge thing. I mean, right? Like, or two, that they're doing something private with the intention of eventually taking it public. And then maybe they commit it out, but they don't realize that once it goes public, you can still look at commit histories. You can still see all that stuff that used to be there. Right. And so it's definitely an issue that people still need to be consistently concerned about.
Yeah, definitely. And on the 150% or 150x, whatever, it was the article, it was written weirdly how that it put that. So it was either 50 or 150. I think just based on my reading, it was 150. But yeah, man, it's crazy. And you and I were talking about it a little bit before the show started, but a lot of these were like .pem files, right? So certificate based things. We were talking about how that like you guys often find PFXs, right? So an export of the entire certificate chain when you're doing testing and that kind of thing. And I know back in the days of sysadmin, and it was not uncommon to export those cert chains out so you have them somewhere else, and they end up somewhere where you can get to them from somewhere else, and that's a problem. They generally require passwords, but most of those are going to be password or something really simple because they don't want to forget it and lose it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. And on the note in chat too, Brian, no, someone give you a candy bar, just tell them whatever they want to know, man.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty clear. Humans work on a reward system, and if someone's offering you the reward, go ahead and give them the data. You got to reward them back. I mean, clearly.
Yeah,
right?
those free candy vans. No, don't go near the free candy vans. I've got kids. I can't say that now. Yeah.
Michael, I never got to try those gummies. Still upset with Oscar.
Yeah. No, he didn't share, just so you're aware.
Yeah, he never did share.
Yeah, no sharing. Andy's not here today. I'm pretty sure he's doing something fun. I'm not gonna rat him out too much, but I think I have a pretty good idea of what he's doing today, and I'm jealous. So just gonna leave it at that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So stop leaking your passwords. It's just really stop putting sensitive information where it doesn't need to be.
Well, I'd say that if you're on a development team or anything like that, or you're in any situation that's taking use of, AI things or things like that, or you're using GitHub, or you're using anything that's like a third party that you're putting data into, always be, considerate of what's going into that. I mean, I even think about, as pen testers and someone who manages a pen testing team, I am consistently thinking about all of that, to the point where someone's like, oh, can we use this DNS enumeration tool that's online, like DNS dumpster or something like that, right? Can we use that on our clients? Well, I mean, what's the implication of that, right? Like now are we putting our clients and having that data cached somewhere, and that yes, that data is publicly available. Anyone could go get that data, right? If they were looking for it. But are we doing anything? Are we tainting that landscape in any way by putting it out there and caching it somewhere and making it a thing, right? And so, maybe the answer is still that we use it depending on the situation, but you always want to be asking that question: is what is the implication of me putting everything out there that I'm putting out there, whether you're entering something in a Google search box, or whether you're asking ChatGPT to do something, or whether you're putting something in GitHub. And then, if you're the type of person who's creating policies and stuff, make sure you're putting those things in your policies and talking about those types of things.
Definitely. Yeah, I saw the question there too about your hat, but I thought
I
that
did
was
answer
like a
it.
rogue. Okay, I was gonna say I thought that was like Rogue Fitness equipment, Rogue, that kind of Rogue.
No,
But,
this is Rogue
not.
Brewery. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I do have a Rogue Fitness equipment hat somewhere too. But
I figured you did. I just assumed. I made a joke with the guys today that before the show here, I was carb loading because I downed like 2 bananas and a whole pile of Rice Krispie treats that my wife had made. So I'm all jacked up. I could probably lift a car right now. That's what it takes.
nice.
All right. So I think we probably beat the ChatGPT thing to death and the passwords. So let's see here. Want to talk a little bit about RTF documents here?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, just a
So
little. Yeah, go give us a little intro there.
yeah, so there's a Microsoft Word vulnerability that got patched in this last patch Tuesday, I believe. CVE 2023 21716. RCE through RTF files, affecting many different versions of Office, right? Office 365, inserted preview through what, I don't know. Google it, honestly. It's a lot of
It's
different
a
versions.
bunch.
Office
It's a bunch.
2016,
Yeah.
13, 10, 7, pretty much all the versions, right? It's a pretty simple attack as far as the actual crash goes, as far as like that, the way it works. Essentially, inside an RTF document, there's a section for a font table and font definitions. And if too many fonts are defined, like just the beginning of them is defined, it's writing that data to the heap, and then, which is the memory of the application, and then it eventually kind of fills it up, causes a heap corruption, and will cause the application to crash. And in a situation where all the details that you need to know, and how to work around it and make the exploit happen, that could potentially lead to RCE. The proof of concepts that I saw out there right now are just kind of that simple crash. I didn't look exhaustively. There may be something out there that actually has an RCE in it. I didn't see that, and I looked a few days ago, so maybe something happened in the last day or two. But that said, generally with these types of things, buffer overflows, heap corruptions, overflows, there's some kind of specificity to the actual RCE, whether it be knowing the exact version or build of the Office version that you're using, or they're using, or it's going to land in, or Windows version or something. Normally there has to be like some kind of details about that. I haven't exploited this one myself yet, so I can't say for sure all that goes into it, but kind of a lot of times what you'll see is a delay in actual proof of concepts that have any exploitation, or like a Metasploit module or something like that. But over time, as people kind of get those offsets and the different things that they need and kind of how to write that reliably, sometimes we'll see more and more of that pop up. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these start to become more available. We'll have to see. But
Yeah. I was actually just looking to try to see. Did you catch if it's only the Office products or if also like WordPad has any vulnerability?
nothing I read mentioned WordPad. It did,
Okay.
though, however, mention that they don't have to actually open it in Office. The preview window is enough, right? So if you have like previews
Yeah.
turned on in your email or something like that in Outlook, you can get hit with it that way if someone has an actual working RCE. So
That preview window is pretty powerful. This is not the first one we've seen in the last year that can abuse the preview window. So
yeah,
something to keep in mind there, because I know a lot of us, just over time kind of utilize that preview window so that you're not loading something up fully. But I'm not sure that matters so much anymore. And a lot of times you're going to preview the first email you just got. So keep that in mind, right? I mean, if you
yeah.
just open an Outlook, it's going to be, if it's on top, you're going to preview it whether you want to or not. I did notice mine. I'm not sure if this was a new thing, but generally when I load Outlook now, it actually doesn't preview the first email anymore. It just tells me I've got to click on one to preview it. So that's a nice little thing they've added there.
Mhm.
I just noticed that recently. But yeah, I was curious about the WordPad thing because generally WordPad's a little safer for that kind of thing, right? It just doesn't have as much functionality, but was curious given the mechanics of this one. It's an overflow of some sorts.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
couldn't honestly say. And while WordPad generally doesn't get hit with as much stuff because it doesn't have much features, I mean, I don't know what the patch schedule is like on it either. So
Right.
one of those things
Yeah.
I'd be careful
Probably not
about.
good.
But do you have any notes about the fixes? I know that there was some kind of like there's a patch. I remember reading in it, and I didn't get into this too much, but the article that we had said that the patch there were some ways around it potentially.
Yeah, I haven't read up on the ways around it just yet, other than just that there is the patch. Kind of the same thing. There is a patch. There are bypasses for that, or at least workarounds to get around the patch. So I expect we'll see another patch, and who knows, maybe this becomes, you know, Word Infinity instead of Print Nightmare Infinity. But
Yeah.
yeah, just have to kind of keep an eye on it. I mean, from a defense perspective, it doesn't change a ton, right? I mean, same thing with your users. Don't be opening documents that you're not expecting to get, that kind of thing. That's not always foolproof, right? Because we see all the time where attackers compromise a trusted source and send an email from them. So you're like, oh, this is from my accounting firm. Let me just open this up and see what's going on. So doesn't fix as well there. Beyond that, yeah, the only thing I know is to patch it at the moment and kind
And
of
some
kind of
other
hope for the best.
precautions. I mean, obviously disable the preview, right?
Yeah.
The document preview. Saw some stuff about protected view being enforced, and that would at least require an additional sandbox escape from it if that was in place. So little things like that. I mean, obviously security is kind of always about having layered security. So, apply the patch, turn off preview, and make sure protected view is, in use, all those things. So
Yeah, I think the link that we included in the show notes is like it's 2 hour Project Taffy article, but if you go down to the sources of that, I believe it's the first one in there gives you some registry key modifications to make, that kind of thing. That's not always easy to do in enterprise, but it's certainly something to do if you can, script that out or however you can manage that. But yeah, absolutely. The configure Microsoft or Outlook to kind of read it in standard plain text is a great call anyway. You're gonna stop a lot of things right there with that. But yeah, just keep an eye out for that. Like Eric said, not a lot of sort of like I'll call it more of a payload from that exploit at the moment. Just more that the proof concept exists and that it can be abused. But sure, it's coming, like you're saying. So get ahead of it now before it's a bigger problem. Because most folks aren't blocking RTF. I mean, they're not going to be blocking usage of RTF. Um, those things coming through email. Nobody's really going to blink twice. We've been screaming about Word documents and Excel documents for years, right? Turning off macros and all these things, and so it's just more of that cat and mouse game of we block something, the attackers find a different way to do something else. So keep that in mind.
yep.
I think that's probably about it on that one, unless you've got more.
No, I think
Yeah,
that's pretty basic. I mean, vulnerability, patch it up,
yeah, yeah, pretty
take
much.
extra precautions. Just obviously, I guess, be aware that if it's true that it's going to require another patch, and there are ways around it, like we saw with, I mean, not only just the print nightmare stuff, we did see that obviously multiple times, but even with the proxy log on stuff and the proxy not log on, or whatever, with all the different names
Proxy
for them at
log
the
on,
same time.
proxy shell, proxy not log on. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
there was some one like different ways that kind of kept coming about in different situations that had to be patched multiple times. So just sometimes they don't get on the first try, and it sounds like there's rumor that this one didn't already. So be on extra alert, I guess, around those types of things.
Yeah. Oh, the other great example were some of the Exchange patches that came out uh, earlier last year. They just kept patching it, kept offering workarounds, and it was several weeks long process of like every day we had to get up and check, okay, what's the new thing that's happening today with this, because they just couldn't quite get it.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind. Don't if you've got something like this where like Eric's saying, where there's probably going to be multiple patches or something, just keep following up on it. That can be tough to do. We're all busy. It can be a struggle with that, but just always kind of keep that stuff in mind. If there's a workaround, then you need to stay on top of it.
Yeah. All else fails, ask ChatGPT to patch it for you.
Sure, yeah, that would work. Yeah, just Just
make
give them
sure
your
to
like
give it your
domain
domain admin
Yeah.
credentials.
Yeah. So it can reach
I'm
everything.
glad our minds are in the same place on that one.
Yeah, please don't
Speaking
do
of
that.
getting malicious emails, though, I mean, maybe if you get an RTF document that's over 500 megs, maybe we've got a different thing going on. You want to talk
Yeah,
about
well, yeah, probably not going to be an RTF in that one, though. I don't know.
that? Who knows,
Utilizing
right?
this one, yeah. So this is one that I feel like we talk about it every other month or pretty close to it. But our good friend Emotet, Emotet is back again, which in the article it said they took about a 3-month hiatus. I don't know about that. That's not a hiatus. That was like that's just pretty normal. Probably just didn't catch them for 3 months.
They took a Christmas break. I mean, well,
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm calling that a hiatus. I will say it seems like we've seen Umatet just consistently for years, like with no breaks. That said, I do often get it confused with Quackbot because they operate almost exactly the same, very similar delivery mechanisms, capabilities. They tend to hide in the same place in the OS, a lot of things like that. So it could just be my brain messing with me, but I do know we talk about Emotet and Quackbot a ton. So this latest one is just a new tactic to get around a lot of the good things we're doing in the world with email filtering and scanning attachments and things like that. And so yeah, like I said, new sort of delivery mechanism for Emotet. They're still often going to be through an email, and they are usually in a compressed attachment, just in general, to try to get past some filters. A lot of times they'll set a password on that, so that your email filter can't scan it, that kind of thing. But they'll give you the password. They want you to be able to unzip their malware. But this one, it's just a highly compressed Office document. So most likely Word or Excel is generally where we see those. This time though, whenever you unzip that document, it inflates to 500 megabytes. So 1/2 of a gig essentially, and that's going to be an Office document of that size. Is the way it seems anyway. Um, Same kind of deal though, with its capabilities and that kind of thing. But it is an interesting method. You and I were talking a little bit about this, and just it, it's essentially being used to get around a lot of your antivirus and EDR capabilities. Right? There's a lot of padding in the file, so that when they scan that first chunk of the file they're looking at, they say, "No, this is good. This is just a Word document or whatever." Um, so kind of neat there. And I know, Eric, you had some other thoughts on kind of why they may be doing that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly why. I haven't been able to get my hands on it and take a look what's actually going on there. But I can say, just from as someone who tries to get around EDR and stuff, right, and tries to push malware through on boxes, that one of the things that a lot of things seem to lean on is the entropy of the file overall, or entropy of certain sections of the file. And if it's really high entropy, it's assumed to be either I mean, generally an encrypted payload or something like that, or maybe just a lot of machine code, and that's pretty much it. When you look at a Word document, obviously the entropy should be very low. And so that would be a big indicator for receiving a Word doc or scanning a Word doc, is just what the entropy is like. So if they were to pad it with, the same sentence 500,000 times or whatever the situation is to get it to the right size, then one, the entropy would be very low overall for the file, and two, would be extremely compressible. So it would make sense there as well. Again, I haven't had a chance to analyze it, so I can't say that that's what they're doing, but that
You
from
want
an
to
attacker point of view, I would say that makes sense.
you want to kind of describe entropy in a file. I don't think a lot of people are checking the file entropy that are probably on our call here.
I mean, their EDRs are, but yeah.
Their EDRs are, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's taking a look at like kind of the if you were to plot out all the different characters, all the different, bytes that are being used in a file, kind of where they tend to group up, right? If there's a lot of large groupings of those, such as what we see in the English language or a lot of other languages where there's words that are going to be written in certain, characters, you'll have large groupings around like, A through Z and the numbers, and not so much in other places, and the overall entropy of that file would be low. Essentially, there's not a lot of randomness to the dispersion of characters or bytes throughout that file. High entropy means that is basically almost randomized, right? There's no real groupings. It seems like things are just kind of all over the place. This is what we see with encryption, or sometimes with just code in general, though the code does have a little bit lower entropy straight up than like an encryption would. But oftentimes attackers, when they're developing malware or something like that and trying to get it by if I just have a string of code or something that's kind of static, it's very easy for antivirus, EDR, anything like that to have a signature and just detect it right off the bat. So we don't want that. So we want something that's kind of dynamic. That's something that adds some level of encryption to it and changes it up kind of periodically or whatever you might have, and makes it so that that's no longer detectable or not as easily detectable. But in doing so, oftentimes we introduce a high entropy data stream into this file, right? And depending on the file overall, if it's a small file, like if we have like a quick little application, we want you to just run real fast. We send you in an email, we want to run it. It's going to connect back to a C2 platform. I mean, a big chunk of that file, I mean, the majority of it, 75% of it is this encrypted payload essentially, right? And so that's very, that flags quite a bit when you have a 75% of something is high entropy. You're basically like, they're hiding something, they're trying to be secretive, they're trying to be sneaky, they're trying to do something bad. Not always, you're going to have false positives occasionally on it, but it's heavily leaned on, I'd say, by a lot of things. I mean, they use other term or things too, but that's a pretty negative scoring when an EDR sees something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And even when we're doing, so if we're doing sort of manual malware analysis, um, maybe not to the reverse engineering level, that kind of spot of it, but if we're just, let's say we pull down a file in an engagement where we're doing an investigation, it's just kind of a weird file, we don't know why it's there. Maybe it was running as a service and that kind of flagged our attention, that kind of thing. A lot of times when we're looking at these custom beacons and custom C2 beacons and things like that attackers are using, and honestly, in most engagements, they are at least somewhat customized because they've got a different team server they're reaching back out to or something like that. So the hash value, like the SHA-256 or 1 or maybe 5, whatever you're using, is not going to match a bunch of known malware files. So you go look in VirusTotal or somewhere like that, pop that hash in. Those hashes are unique to that individual file. So if you make a copy of it, then it has the same hash, that kind of thing. So a lot of times we're finding these types of files in an engagement. We're going to go check the hash first, right? Because if somebody else has already done the work for us, then why reinvent the wheel, that kind of thing. But a lot of times we find that we can't find that file in VirusTotal or wherever else we're looking. We've got a few other sources we utilize pretty heavily. So at that point, then we take the file down and we start doing some basic analysis on it. And one of the checks that we do is an entropy check. So we utilize a tool that I cannot think of the name of right now. I can see the icon for it. It's built into our investigator workstations that we use. But essentially that will do an entropy check. And so we're going to look at those numbers and see if it's is this pretty normal or is this a little bit too high or whatever the case may be. And then we may do some more analysis on it. I mean, we're going to do a bunch of other things, like really standard things. Look for strings. Strings is a big one, just because sometimes you'll find little snippets in there of what this file does or what it's not supposed to do, or why it's legitimate or why it's not. Did see one recently that we took a look at that they'd done all kinds of fun things in there, like they had thrown like Microsoft Corporation, copyright information into the file to make it look like it was a legitimate Microsoft file, and that was showing up in the strings, so that anybody doing those quick checks like we're doing might go, oh, this is just some weird Microsoft file that we would expect to see. Obviously some other things we can do there to check. For one thing, if the hash isn't showing up in one of the well-known sources, probably a pretty good chance it's not actually a Microsoft file, because most of those have been hashed and are out there, that kind of thing. But yeah, entropy is a big one we look for, just to get that extra flag of, should we look at this further? Is this fairly normal, that kind of thing. So, fairly smart thing for these guys to do. And like Eric said there too, in much more brilliant and eloquent ways, very likely a whole bunch of padding and repeating in these files. We see that pretty often too. We'll open up a file and look at it from a malware analysis standpoint and start to look at something like strings. We'll just see pages of A, like just capital A for pages, right? Just something to fluff up that front part there. And so, really, really common to see at least some padding in there. This sounds like a whole lot, if it's 500 meg or whatever. So I think that'll kind of stand out if you're really looking at that kind of thing. But yeah, getting past those EDRs, just a new tactic there.
It really bums me out that a lot of attackers are so boring, because
I know, right?
I, at least in the day, but back when I used to do all of the encryption of any of our payloads, or like if I had like a XOR string or something like that, XOR strings are my favorite because the way XOR works, if you have a bunch of 0 null bytes in the executable that you're doing, right, those are going to be like your key. So if someone really wanted to figure out your key and you're not going to be too secretive about it, they could look for the null sections and actually see your key. So I like to have fun with it, and I would like do the lyrics to songs, or one time I did a recipe for pork fried rice, things like that. And so there we have client environments that definitely got malware that was encrypted with recipes and lyrics, and
Sure.
sometimes just
Yeah.
my favorite quotes from movies, whatever. At least have fun. So when someone's reverse engineering it or taking a look at it, they're like, why is it talking about, pork fried rice here?
Yeah, well, and from an investigator standpoint of that, I would appreciate it if they would do more of that because I want that fun.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Help us out.
but-
A's,
yeah,
long strings of
yeah.
A's. Come
Come
on,
on,
that's boring.
yeah, that's garbage. Like, don't do that to me. And I understand. Yeah, it compresses down really nicely, which was kind of one of the points in this attack, right? If you've got a if you've got 499 meg worth of A's, that's going to compress down really well in a zip file and get through an email filter. I get it. I know what you're doing, attackers. It's fine. But one of the more fun cases we ever worked was the one with they were utilizing pieces of. It's an old famous chat sequence. I cannot remember the name of it now.
I don't either, but I remember it happening. I remember seeing
Yeah,
it.
because we drug in the whole team for this pretty much because we were
Yeah.
just looking at a piece of malware and we're like, what is this talking about? And it was oh man, I'm trying to keep this YouTube friendly here because there was a lot.
It was just it was a fun conversation. We'll just say
It was it was a fun conversation.
that.
It was an AOL chat, and so I think Brian may be picking up on what we're putting down here.
Yeah.
But it was things like I take off my wizard's cloak and watch. Okay, there were just
Yeah.
different things in there. Yeah, it what did involve a ninja. It was
Yeah.
Blood Ninja. That was the name of it. I'm not recommending you go Google that. If you want, I mean, if you're an adult, go for it. But they used that chat sequence as part of their malware, and it was great. I mean, we had a good laugh out of it. We were all super stressed. We'd been on this case for a couple of weeks or something at that point, and we found this weird thing, and it gave us all a good chuckle and gave us a little juice to carry on, and keep going through the investigation. But yeah, do that, attackers. Give me something to work with. So I'm tired of looking at your boring code. So give me something.
I'm gonna steer us back now. So with Emotet, it still seems like, at least that their MO, I mean, like, again, it was a small break, if you want to call it that, but their MO is still kind of eventually to deploy ransomware. Is that correct?
Yeah, generally, that's mostly what it's used for now. And I'll give my standard speech that I probably have memorized at this point. But Emotet's been around since I believe 2014. Started out as a banking Trojan. All of the things that we see now, not all of them, but a lot of them did start out as a banking Trojan. Initially, the idea was to steal bank account numbers, credit card numbers, that kind of thing. Turns out they were really effective at what they did. So now attackers leverage those to deliver additional malware. In this case, usually ransomware, or at least the path to get to ransomware. I'll say that they're delivering other tools, other their C2 beacons, that kind of thing. But it does seem like it's mostly about ransomware. Like we said, the tactics are still often the same once it's on the system. It's generally gonna um, it's gonna leave traces behind under like C users, username, app data. There's almost always something there from Umatet. It is polymorphic though, so like we talked about before with the hash values, it's going to have different hash values as it moves. As it moves through your network, it often changes. So if you're seeing like 3 hits for the same hash in your environment, there's a good chance you've probably got 18 systems that are actually infected with it, that kind of thing. Um, it often uses SMB, so file shares, to move around. Um, SMB logs they're kind of difficult to follow. There's a lot of garbage in there. I bet if you go look in your SMB logs right now, you've probably got a couple hundred failed attempts to connect to some server that existed 10 years ago and still getting pushed out through a group policy, something like that. There's often a lot of noise in those, so it can be tough to track it that way. But yeah, the defensive steps are still pretty much the same. If you see it, get really serious because it's generally a precursor to a ransomware attack. If you catch it early enough, we had a big win in a case recently where the organization reached out to us. It was either Quackbot or Emotet, I can't remember which one, but again, roughly the same how they operate. but reached out to us, said they had gotten it. Someone had tried to execute it. Their EDR actually blocked it, which kind of blew my mind. They're not generally good at blocking it. Hopefully they're getting better, and we'll stop seeing as many of those cases. But stopped it and don't seem to have any spread in the environment. Usually we only see it get stopped after it's spread. And so if you see this in your environment, you detect Emotet, that kind of thing, get on that pretty quickly, start up an investigation, start doing some threat hunting, and start following that trail back. Get any indicators you can to look elsewhere. But again, educate users, right? You get a zip file, you're not expecting it, and it's got a password on it, something like that. Or just in general, you're not expecting it, and you unzip it, and there's a 500 meg Excel document in there. Don't run that Excel document. Don't open that up. It does not have the stock tips or the NCAA bracket information that you think it has in it. So you're not going to win your office pool by opening that thing. Just keep that in mind. Yeah, but beyond that too, yeah, a lot of the other standard stuff applies here too, right? No local admin on workstations. That includes and especially includes your IT and security folks. Don't be running as admin locally. It's going to really limit what this thing can do. They're often going to have to leverage some other exploit to escalate privileges and get up there, and then that stuff can often get noisy with an EDR tool or anything in your environment. So keep that in mind as you're going through.
Yeah. One thing I just remembered as we were kind of going into this one about the RTF thing, I just wanted to point out in case there's anyone out there wise thinking, I'm going to block RTF documents. If you take an RTF document, you rename it to like .doc or .docx or anything that will make Word open it, it'll still exploit. So just so everyone knows. Just to visit back to that real fast. But then talking about, we're talking about Emotet, talking about like kind of the goal of ransomware, but we are seeing a change, or not a full change of the trend, but we're seeing some different trends recently, right? Of people not necessarily going for the encryption side of that ransom, right? And kind of just trying to say, hey, we're going to take your data and we're going to leak it. I mean, we've seen that in combination with encryption a lot, right? And I think plenty of times we've seen it by itself, and just the kind of extortion of we're going to release your stuff, right? But kind of how much more are we seeing it as far as just that exfil side and not the encryption side?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that we've seen a ton of cases with it, but just kind of hearing reports from out in the wild, folks we're talking to that have that kind of thing go on, or have their ears to the ground in a lot more places than we can. Folks that are involved a little more with a lot of other stuff. But essentially, yeah, thinking about the evolution of ransomware, right? So you think back to like WannaCry, that kind of thing. WannaCry was kind of a ransom worm, right? It goes to a system, it automatically hits it, encrypts it, drops the ransom note, that kind of thing, exploits vulnerabilities. Then we moved more toward the interactive ransomware, I guess is the way I want to put that, where you have an active attacker on your network. They're using PSExec or whatever other means to spread the ransomware throughout the environment and then hit you all at once. So you're not just getting like one system at a time, that kind of thing. The important part there was that you had an active attacker in your network. There was someone on the other side watching that. It wasn't an automated attack. It could be scripted, that kind of thing, but there's someone there. And so we saw that for years, and it took us a long time to get people to understand that ransomware wasn't just like WannaCry. It wasn't just a virus that happens to you, and you need to do some further hunting, and they've been in your environment doing other things. And then sort of the exfiltration and extortion piece came along over the last few years of, hey, now they're letting you know that they did other things in their network. Not only did they encrypt all your servers, they leave you a note saying, hey, we also took a terabyte of data from you or whatever, and you're gonna have to pay to get that back, even if you can recover your servers. And so now, just going on down that path, we're seeing more of these exfiltration only ransom attacks. So they come in, same general methods, right? It may start out with Emotet, something like that. But they're in your environment. They do some looking around. They catalog your data essentially and take what they think you're going to want to pay for. Take that off to their servers and say, hey, here's an example of what we have. Just letting you know that we have this. And also, we would like several Bitcoins so that we don't release this out into the wild and make it public. And then you have a whole PR nightmare, that kind of thing going on in your hands. Some of the things that we've heard just through the grapevine is that this is very effective. Of the of the cases, which I'll say is numbers more than a dozen that we had been told about. I'm being very careful here with how I want to phrase this, but of the ones that we were kind of told about through the grapevine a little bit, the mass majority of those pay the ransom because they figure, hey, I'm going to pay this. These guys are going to delete my data. It's going to be the end of it, that kind of thing. So the thing to remember about that is if it's very effective, the attackers are getting paid off, they're going to keep doing this. I mean, these guys are financially motivated. They want to make money. They're not there just to hurt you. They want you to pay them. So if
I've
they
got,
found a new way to do this, that's the way to go.
I've got a couple questions. I mean,
Yeah.
do you think that the removal of the encryption side of things, or just really, or maybe it's not the removal of it, but do you think that the going this way and just focusing primarily on the exfil and the extortion is a result of like people listening and getting better backup solutions? I mean, more offline backups, or maybe security around their backups is just better and people aren't able to delete them, or whatever the situation is? Or do you think it's um that, or maybe something along the lines of like trying to maybe get governments off their back a little bit? I mean, if you're shutting down infrastructure with encryption, you got a lot of a government on your back. You got some worldwide authorities kind of coming after you in certain aspects
Right.
and stuff like that. If you don't do that, if you're just extorting people, I mean, do you get a little less pressure? I mean, I don't know.
I
What do you
think
think?
so. No, I think that's a good point. So that's one I hadn't really considered. So I'm glad you brought that point up because my initial reaction to this was, hey, this is probably a win for the good guys. Uh, that we've been doing a really good job at having people get offline backups, be recoverable if you have a ransomware attack, that kind of thing. And again, that cat and mouse game of like we do a thing to fix this, they change their tactics and move on. So I think that's a really really good point though, man. You do get a lot of that pressure. Look at the pipeline situation there a couple years ago with
Mhm.
the gas pipeline. You shut that stuff down, they're going to come after you. I think went after those guys pretty hard. I saw the other day some of the our evil folks had been arrested, so they were going after them. But yeah, this pure extortion. Um, I do know that government folks aren't as upset about you paying. They don't seem to be as upset about you paying these types of ransoms.
Sure.
So I think there may be something to that. Hadn't really put that together, but
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, not
that's
only
interesting.
look, I think we know that they don't like it. They're still going to kind of pursue these
Yeah,
things and stuff like that. But I mean, if you have to pick, right, of what you're going to be putting your resources into, you're going after things that are shutting down things, right?
yeah,
And things that are kind of funding that side of things, which is more terroristic in nature when you're shutting down healthcare, when you're shutting down infrastructure. If you're just extorting people, I know that sounds like kind of callous, but I mean, like, it's not as big of a deal, kind of, right? It's not as much pressure. And I wonder if
yeah,
that's the situation.
yeah. I think that's very valid, man. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah,
Well, and
I
I
could.
mean,
Yeah,
another thought I have
go
on
ahead.
it too is that obviously I think as time goes on, the reputational damage is oftentimes worse than the file loss damage, you
Hmm.
know. Though as soon as I say that out loud, I kind of think to myself, though, but is it? I mean, we hear constantly about more and more situations with ransomware, right? More and more people have been breached in some way, whether it was ransomware or not, right? More and more breaches constantly. Do you think, is the reputational damage even, I mean, obviously it's bad, right? I'm not going to say,
Yeah,
but is it, do you think it's diminishing? Do you think people are kind of like getting little, I don't know, kind of just
a little callous
resistant?
to it, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I don't know that it's a huge factor yet, but I could see it just continuing to be a factor, right? Because I mean, we preach it all the time, right? It's not if you get breached, it's when, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, but
Because
we're
everybody
security
gets hit.
experts. So we know that. I mean, everybody probably on this call
Yeah,
has that mindset. They know that. They at least have heard that and they're conscious of that, right? But like
yeah,
my neighbor, if I go over and ask him right now, likely, I mean, I don't know what they do for work, but if I was to go ask him, like, how do you feel about someone you do business with getting breached? I feel like the answer to that question, I still don't think people, I think they're uneasy by it. They don't like it. They
yeah,
they think about going somewhere else. But I think just today versus 5 years ago, that answer is a little bit more relaxed probably now.
yeah. I would agree with that. I definitely agree with that. It's just because it's exactly what you're saying. There's just a bombardment of news. It's like, oh, Nvidia got breached the other day. Okay, I
Mhm.
may wait a couple weeks before I install that driver, that kind of thing. But I've still got an Nvidia card. I'm not gonna just burn my machine down to go get another one. That type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably a lot of it. Um, it just and it's weird to me though because it seems to me and this is why I like your explanation of the government pressure, because in most of the encryption event ransomware attacks we've worked over the last 2 years or so, there has been an extortion component, an exfiltration extortion component to that. And to me, that is the most pressure, right? Not only are your systems down, we are also going to leak your data. And, we know a lot of people who took the route of, sure, we can recover, but we can't get that data back. It's going to make it out there. We're going to take that reputational hit, which often was the deciding factor for we're going to pay this ransom, as opposed to like, we'll just rebuild everything and not worry about it.
Right.
So
I mean,
maybe part of that pressure.
I've been on my share of sales calls, and one of the questions I've always asked, no, I don't prefer being on sales calls. I mean, being a technical expert, if you will, on these things, I get on my share of them. And in the past, I would definitely always ask, what's your motivations, right? Like, what's driving this? Sometimes it's compliance, sometimes it's a vendor requirement, sometimes it's just we just want better security, man. And I actually decently often would just hear, we just want to stay out of the news.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting statement to make, right? And I kind of dive into that a tiny bit at first, at least when I first kind of started hearing it. And they were just like, look, I mean, where we're at in our industry and the situation, if we make news because we have a breach, we're gone. We're off the planet. I mean, we're no longer doing business. We're done. We're out of here. And it's that much of it. Like that company who's saying that kind of stuff, they don't care if they lost 1,000 files for their business. Like, they just care about keeping the business running, right? And it is a big pressure.
Definitely is. Yeah. It's it's wild. Just all it is. It's always weird when you hear that, and it makes sense. We understand it, but it is always weird to us. I think I assume even as many sales calls as you've done at this point, it probably still hits your ear a little bit weird when you hear that. But yeah, it's certainly
I appreciate
a motivation.
the honesty though too. I mean,
100%. Yeah, just tell me what your goals are, and I'll work with you. That's kind of how I am too with things. Like, don't try to hide it from me. Don't try to make me write a report that says you didn't have exfil.
Right.
Don't do that kind of thing. Like, if that's what you want, tell me up front. That way we can talk about your options for that kind of thing. But yeah, it's different. But yeah, and yeah, I think from an attacker perspective, if they're getting paid off frequently on this, there's no way this slows down. So it's kind of why I want to talk about it now, because I think we're just now starting to see that uptick. I think it becomes more of a thing. Encryption events are noisy, like Eric said. It not only inside your environment, they're noisy, like, because we can often trace back where did that encryptor come from. They were serving it up from a share over here, and start following that trail of breadcrumbs back a little better. But just moving around and copying files isn't as noisy generally, and so I think there's a lot to that. But yeah, I think it's just going to increase. And talking about exfil just in general, I know you guys do a lot of it with your pen tests, that kind of thing. I know we investigate a lot of it, and just kind of curious, how quiet do you guys think most exfil is, and kind of that process there?
I think it's kind of a mixed bag. I think that exfil is super noisy if someone's looking in the right place, right? It's like saying, like, how bright is your flashlight? Well, if you're not looking at it, it's not bright. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very noisy thing. It's a very bright thing. If you're looking in my direction, that flashlight, you're going to see it, man. And I think that's how kind of data exfil is. If you're looking in that direction, it's noisy. But the problem is, I feel like a lot of people are not looking in that direction, right? I feel like oftentimes people are not logging, or they don't have vision into, they don't have a window into this type of stuff and what's going on. I told you this right before the call, right before this show, but however many years ago I worked with a client, and they kind of felt like they had some gaps in their exfil detection, right? And that client came and said, hey, part of this is I want you to pull a large amount of data out of the environment so we can try to kind of see that happen, because I'm getting reassured by the team and everybody that we have eyes on this, and I just don't know what level we do or don't. And so I did, and I extracted about a terabyte of data out during this, and a lot of it came straight out of like MySQL data, or not MySQL, but like MS SQL or MySQL, just SQL databases in general, right? Some of it just came off of files that I could find, that like large. You try to get things that are just large in general, right? Like VMs or something that's going to be kind of major or something. And at the end of the testing window and stuff and talking, the client asked, "Are you still going to do that exfil check?" And I said, "I did it last week." So if you hadn't heard anything, It's probably a problem, right? You are probably right to not trust your situation. And so, if you're looking at how much data is, and you have a baseline of how much data goes in and out of your environment on a daily basis, weekly basis, all these different windows, and you should be able to see that kind of a fluctuation, right? The problem is that a lot of times when we're dealing with stuff like this, a lot of C2s or a lot of different tools that people use, they use their own kind of certificate pinning type thing, like certificates to encrypt and decrypt, and it's outside of the actual normal handshaking. So if you have some firewall that does the packet inspection, it's not getting into these, right? You're not going to be able to utilize some trusted cert on your system in packet inspection. So they oftentimes don't know what happened, what data got out, what it is, but at least they know a large amount of it got out, But yeah, oftentimes they don't.
Yeah, and from like a forensic perspective, if you have those firewall logs and those traffic logs, that kind of thing, you absolutely can see those big spikes of data. It's often well above what your normal is, or at least a noticeable jump. A lot of folks don't have that. They're not always watching egress traffic. Most people don't worry too much about what's coming out of their network. They worry about what's coming in.
Mhm.
And I would move that you definitely watch what's going out. I mean, just think about the way even beacons work, right? They reach out, not in, generally. So that's a good thing to monitor that egress traffic. Beyond that, though, the big question that we always get when we're working investigations is, can you tell us what was taken? And the answer to that is almost always no. Very rare occasions will we find a good indicator of what was packaged up and sent out the door. It's pretty rare. The places where it's effective, or we can see that kind of thing, is like, did you have some file monitoring in place ahead of time? Something that's showing, okay, this user, who we now know to be compromised because we found them somewhere else during the investigation, we're pulling, a terabyte of files from this file share or from the SQL database, and then we see here where a whole bunch of like 7 zip files were created, that kind of thing. And so sometimes we can follow that path a little bit if you have that monitoring in place ahead of time. But if you don't have something in place ahead of time, there are just almost no ways to try to figure that out. I mean, we can do what we can, but if there's nothing that logged it and nothing that kept up with it, it's a guessing game. And you kind of have to go down that path of, okay, well, we think it came from this server, that kind of thing. And well, so now just sort of assume anything on the server was taken. But a lot of times we can't even get to that level, because how many of you all are monitoring your server to server traffic in your environment? Do you know if server A sent a terabyte to server B? Because I bet you don't. I don't know why you would, unless you've got a firewall in between those that's watching that kind of thing. So things like file monitoring, that kind of thing, it's about the only way. And so forensically, going back in time, trying to look at these things, it's very quiet. Yeah, like Eric said, if you've got a flashlight on that at the time, or you're the one walking through the dark woods with the flashlight on, and somebody happens to look over there, it's going to be really obvious when you see a whole bunch of data leaving your firewall all at once. But going back in time, trying to find that forensically, really, really tough. So it's good to have those things in place ahead of time. It's even better, though, is if you have those things locked down really well, right? Don't have everyone with permissions to the file share that has everything in the environment. And I'm not calling anybody out for this. I'm just saying, get ahead of these things ahead of time, so that if Eric's account gets compromised, he can't take off with the HR data. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Like, there's no reason for that.
Yeah.
So keep those things in mind as you're going. You can limit some of that down, limit how much can be taken. To be fair, most of the time, domain admin accounts get compromised in these attacks because that's what they're shooting for. But hey, maybe your domain admins shouldn't have access to everything in your shares. Lock that down too.
All right. With that, I think we're at time. So, file monitoring, watch your egress, baseline that stuff. Watch out for rich text files, RTFs. Look out for files that are over 500 meg documents. That's kind of weird, right? Don't put your dang credentials or any sensitive information in any third party, anything. I don't care if it's your AI overlords. Just be smart about that stuff. Patch your stuff. We love you,
man. I don't want to offend the AI overlords yet, but yeah. On that, everybody have a great weekend.
Have a great one.
Bye, everybody.
See you next month.